Thank you for joining the first webinar of the Togo webinar series 2025. So I'm excited about this one. This is a really good one. There's going to be a lot of information for you to gather here. We will record this and send it out at the end, but you'll notice there is a chat button there. I see that people are already interacting. I see we have some folks from the UK, Austria, that's awesome, Florida, nice, Brazil, awesome. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad to see all the participation and everybody posting. And there again, like I said, if you guys have questions, feel free at any time during the webinar to post your questions there. For more events like this, at the end, I'll try to show you where you can go on our website. But if you follow us on LinkedIn, you'll get those. You'll see our feed there, and we post all kinds of stuff there. Very informative items as well, not just about webinars and events. New devices that we're adding. There's all kinds of stuff that we post there. So I highly recommend that you guys follow us and also sign up for our newsletter because there's some great information there as well. But today for this webinar, as I said, I'm quite excited about this webinar. It's designing IoT dashboards to amaze your customers, right? So with that, let me just get some introductions going here. Oh, I see Jim from Cary, local. All right. North Carolina, nice. So again, I'm David Hall. I'm the Customer Success Manager here. I've been with Togo for years. I also have Claus. He's a lead software developer. His focus is really on, at least from my personal workings with him, it's really user experience, right? I mean, he's been doing this for years, so I'm really glad to have Claus on. He'll be joining us live here in a minute. With that, for me as a customer success manager, part of my job is really to get my customers inspired, right? So I love talking to people, right? And really getting them inspired to really use Togo. And when you think of Togo, think of customization, right? You can customize Togo in so many different ways. There's so many features on Togo that you can use, whether that's analytics, reporting, it goes on and on and on. But if you ever want a one-on-one demo, just email me. I'll post my email in the chat here in a moment once Claus starts. But you can email me. I'd be glad to give you a demo. We have CSMs in Brazil, all over. So if you guys need a specific area in the country for that, just let me know. But as a customer success manager, what I see a lot with existing customers, not necessarily new customers, is that they'll start building a dashboard and they'll keep it very basic. And it's just because they don't understand what they can do with Togo. Again, it's so customizable. There's so much you can do with Togo, right? So I'm going to show you 3 or 4 examples here, but this is just one example of monitoring a bus in this situation. But for me, Togo is more than just visualization, and our customers would agree. We have large customers and small customers, and it really goes beyond visualization when you're using Togo, right? As I said, it's analytics, preventative maintenance, reporting. There's all kinds of different things in Togo that go beyond visualization. So when I'm meeting with customers, that's one thing I focus on as well, is really beyond visualization. Speaking of preventative maintenance, right? I have customers in all kinds of different verticals that are interacting with Togo on the platform, and obviously their customers, right, are using the application side, which I'll speak about here a little bit later. But in this case here, what you're looking at, it's a nice dashboard, right? You can make it even better than this, but there's reporting. You can have alarms. You can turn them on and off right through Togo. I work with a lot of smart buildings out of New York. I work with them all over the UK, but I have one very large customer in New York. And what they're doing with Togo is I could be a maintenance guy at 2 a.m., right? I'm sleeping or, and I get an alert from my mobile app, right? From Togo saying, hey, there's a leak in apartment 1. Right? I can go right into a platform just like you're looking at here, an application you're looking at here, and I could turn that valve off in real time within milliseconds. So again, preventative maintenance, right? Whether that's in the industrial sector, which I have customers doing that, compressors vibrating too much, they can shut that off. So again, when you're thinking about Togo, it's much more than just visualization, right? And here, really, like this is an example of like a water treatment plant, right? Here, they're not only doing preventative maintenance, but they're also doing analytics, right? What is my consumption rate during this time of year, right? Is one very simple scenario, right? But it's really looking at the data and analyzing what was happening in certain conditions, what is happening, and then you can kind of predict, what it's going to look like in the future. And it doesn't necessarily apply just to, a water treatment plant. That can be with anything, right? So you have real-time data reporting here, which I think is extremely powerful within Togo. And here I work with a lot of, all the CSMs do. We all work in so many different verticals. But in this particular one, I like this dashboard, and I have a few customers that I speak to all the time, but there's many customers in the agriculture space, right? And they use Togo in different ways. I have customers that are tracking cattle, right? They're tracking their equipment. They're tracking how long a cattle gate is open. If it's open more than 60 seconds, send an email, SMS message, and a push notification, right? They're tracking their water trough usage. But one unique thing that I thought was really cool, and they do this with their propane that's on their site for this particular, it's a huge farm out in Texas. And what they're doing is when their grain bins, their feed bins get low, let's say it's a 18-ton feed bin, when it gets low down to 1 ton, an alert will automatically go out because the developer on Togo has set the threshold at 1 ton, send a message to my feed provider. And dispatch will get that at the feed provider. Will get that message. They'll dispatch a truck. They'll acknowledge it. And me as the farm owner, I know, oh, they've acknowledged the alert. I can see here the driver's going to be on the way. And then I get it. I didn't have to make any phone calls. Togo did it all for me. Same situation with propane, right? Just a couple examples. Propane gets low. Alert goes out to my provider. They acknowledge alert. They come fill it back up, and I can see from my levels on my application that now my propane is filled. So again, start thinking about it's much more than visualization. It's really actionable data, right? What can we do with that data? And there's many things you can do with Togo with the data as well. We got really nice reporting. You could have a cool PDF or just a simple CSV, right? And those can go out on schedule, or on demand. It just matters on how, again, think configuration, customization when you're working with Togo. So it's really endless. I work with customers and they're doing things that I have never thought of, but are super cool. So very nice. So if we just talk about the basics, right, just to get started, just so we understand of the difference between Togo, what is Togo admin, right? Togo admin is where you're going to design your application, right? This is where you're going to do the development, right, of your application. Your customers will not have access to this. But let's say I have fellow developers within my company or my organization that also need access to my Togo admin. I would add them in what we call team members. And what those team members will have access to, they'll have access to everything except for your billing, right? They can't change that. But they'll have access to everything to build and assist you within your application. I won't go into profiles here too much, so I highly recommend, again, I'll put my email so you guys can schedule a demo with me. I highly recommend scheduling a demo with me. If you need one in Portuguese or Spanish or whatever, just let me know and I'll direct you to the appropriate CSM that speaks those languages. But what profiles are, think of profiles as sub-accounts of your main Togo admin account. There's no difference in profile 1 to profile 2 as far as what you can do, right? So I can isolate Pepsi in profile 1 and Coca-Cola in profile 2 or whatever it is. and I can assign different team members to those profiles to develop in those specific areas. Again, there's much more than that to it, but just at a high level, you can really share it out. So that's really Togo Admin. When you think Togo Admin, think, this is where I'm going to do my development. Only my developers should be here. Then when you think of Togo Run is your end user experience, right? You can change the domain name, the first part. Of course, you can white label the whole thing, but I can put my company name, my company logo. So I'm developing, I've built my application on the admin, Togo Admin, and now I'm in Togo Run within my admin, and I am configuring my end user experience. Dictionary, SSO, there's several security features in there. There's a lot that you can do. Put in your company logo, as I said, your favicon, terms and conditions. There's a lot you can do in Togo Run. But I really wanted to take a little bit of time to let you know the difference between the Togo Admin and Togo Run. Admin is where you develop. Togo Run is where you build out your end user experience, right? Very powerful stuff. I see we have more people joining. Welcome, Marcus. I see you're from Austria. Diego from Brazil. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad to see everybody here. Now that's a starting point. I'm going to pass it over to Klaus Boris. For those of you that joined a little late, Klaus is a lead developer here at Togo, right? And his expertise, in my opinion, my personal opinion, is the user experience, right? So he's really focused on user experience, and he's a great asset for all of us here at Togo. So with that, I'm going to let Klaus go ahead and join. It looks like his camera's loading. We'll give him just a second. Let's see if we have any questions.
Yeah, can you hear me, David?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, nice. Hi, everyone. So hopefully my camera has loaded at this point, but as David showcased here, we're going to be talking about how to design dashboards to amaze your customers, right? And that is kind of quite a bold claim when you think about it. If you're thinking about amazing your customers with dashboards, and my focus here on Tago.io as a lead developer is working on mostly on the front end part of Tago.io, but not only that. But when it comes to user experience, as David mentioned, there's a lot of things that come with it. If you develop an application for monitoring, you want your users to receive notifications and alerts in their mobile phone so they can act upon things. But today we're going to be talking about the dashboards, right? To design the dashboards, because once you start gathering measurements and other analytical data, whatever you want from your sensors, or even doing post analysis in post, like post processing to get more data out of it, you need to present that information for your users or your end users to visualize it, to access it, and act upon that information. And not only that, but when you think about the experience overall, we're going to be splitting this webinar parts in separate sections. So this first section, I'll be giving you the starting points, which is basically what most of this first dashboard will look very familiar to some of you. I think everyone, I guess, who already use Tago.io, because it will be like a default dashboard, but we are going to be cleaning it up. And we're not going to be doing a hands-on approach today. We are going to be focusing more on the concept, because to me, it's more like a step-by-step iteration process, right? You have this first version that you have, and then you keep improving on it until you reach the desired results. And that also works with time constraints. Let's say you have an application that you need to deliver monitoring for tomorrow because you have installed sensors, and your customer, your clients, need to be seeing that data and acting upon it. So you will deliver like a version that is kind of half-baked, doesn't look that good, doesn't feel that good, maybe confusing. And we're going to be walking you through a lot of these steps that in the part of my work that I do design, I think about like doing these small improvements over time. So we get the core of the functionality, we got the core of the idea, and then we start improving upon it. And that the same goes for the interface, the user experience. And when we are talking about amazing your customers, I'm going to be giving you tips. I'm going to be showcasing functions that you may have not seen before in Sago.io, features that we have released in the past year. I will be going to showcase them, but I'm not going to be tell you how to configure these things explicitly because we have other resources for that. Okay. So I'm just warning you that I will be talking about a lot of things over screenshots here, but we will be covering more in deep in the, I forgot the name, but we have a 2-day training session that's coming up where I can cover more things, especially the part of custom widgets that some of you may be interested in, because other than our widgets and the functionality on the dashboard that we already provide, you can customize it even further by creating your own widgets that do even more that we can do, but because we cannot prescribe general solutions if we don't know every use case possible. But with custom widgets, you can do even more. So again, let's go back to the basics, right? So David introduced the platforms, the main applications that we have here at Tago.io. So I'm going to be showing it mostly on Tago.io admin for now. The screenshot will be there. But when you create a dashboard, you know that you put your sensors in Tago, you get simulated devices just to test it out. And that's perfectly fine because once you deliver a dashboard, once you create it, you can still update it and your clients, your customers will get the updates as soon as they refresh the page, right? So even if you deliver like an experience that's not perfect on the first version, you can improve upon it. In this webinar, we're going to be doing like the happy path because no one will get angry at us. It just no one would get frustrated by using it. But in this first slide, I will just take a couple of seconds, it's a few seconds at most, where I will not say anything, just for you to look at this first dashboard. It may be something that you have seen before, like in when you use Tago.io or any other software. So I'm going to be just taking a sip of water here. Just look at the screen. Don't need to try to understand everything. I'm going to be talking about it, but just take a look at this and see how you feel about this thing. Okay, so I think that's enough because it's just mainly the first impressions, right? Because we cannot analyze the first impressions of our users like we read their minds. We're going to have to engage with them. We're going to have to talk to them. We're going to have to understand how they're using the dashboards we develop. So in this case, when you see this dashboard, you may have gotten your own first impressions of what I did here. Because, and if you use Tago.io, you know that this is just the default theme, that the widgets have no customization. I didn't do much about the data that is being shown there. It's basically just default widgets that are showing measurements from sensors, right? So you can see that there are a bunch of numbers, a bunch of words. And if you try to read and make sense of this stuff, your brain will eventually work your own interpretation of what this dashboard does. But some users may get overwhelmed if you present them with a lot of data without making sense of things for them a little bit. Maybe you don't want to show all the data all at once. Maybe you don't want to have numbers that are not attached to anything. Maybe, like when you think about temperatures, if you know like the imperial and the metric system, you know a lot of countries use one, and then when we talk about this, we cannot like really understand because we will assume something, right? Because if you think about temperature, if you think that it's Kelvin, like in this scenario, it would be like really bad, right? 21 Kelvin is really not great for anyone at Tago.io headquarters, right? If that's an indoor temperature sensor. But if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit, those are two different things. So these values have no meaning until they are attached to something, right? they may have meaning if your application is local. They may have meaning if your users are just from a country that just uses Celsius or just uses Fahrenheit. And that may be your case. But if you're developing on a global scale, or even if you have like one or two customers that live in a different country than you or a different region than you, they may need to access these facilities, these things that make things easy, right? So if you think about units like units of measurement, like there's a humidity sensor there on the side, and I'm telling you these things. And if you look at the screenshot and read the text below, you know that one is temperature, other is humidity, there's the outdoor and there's the indoor. And then you have a couple of numbers in the middle section, and there's a table that looks like really cramped. There's no space there. But if you take a look at that table, you will eventually see that there's like a thing that looks like a message, right? There's log written all over it. So there's log. And if you think about a log, you know there's a message. So there are danger warning. And when you think about the experience, so you need to think about like how the users will perceive this application, right? It's not only making it look flashy and shiny and adding a bunch of colors and that's it. It's not. You need to think about the units so the users can see the values, and the number will have a meaning because it will have an unit attached to it. And maybe add some images and improve the text so it's not generic. So maybe if you have a sensor for temperature, do you want it to say temperature all the time? Or do you want to say what temperature does that refer to? And we can use a bunch of things. You can use the labels, you can use the widget's title, right? You can see in the screenshot, there's generic titles, right? So card number 1, icon number 1, line number 1. So these are all generic, and we're going to be covering these concepts on a step-by-step basis here, because I believe that with this, you'll be ready to just like iterate on your dashboards and make your customers like really feel amazed about using your dashboards. Because when it comes down to it, it's just you gotta listen to some feedback, and you gotta even look at your own creation and just think, okay, does this make sense for me personally? Is this my vision? Because in this case, that's not my vision, right? I put a bunch of numbers, I put some charts. Okay, it's job done, right? I just tick a box that I delivered this dashboard, but I didn't really, right? The dashboard doesn't deliver. It doesn't amaze. It doesn't make it even for like it might be like a passable experience at best, right? Because I'm going to be referring to this a lot, so I'm taking more time on this one. This is what I mentioned. Like, you don't need to try to make sense of this. We will make sense of the step-by-step, the steps that we will take to make this dashboard better for your customers in overall experience and not only on the user interface. So let's go to the next slide now, because I think there's a lot we can do. So I have already spoiled a little thing, but we are going to be adding more context to this because, like I mentioned, the numbers doesn't mean anything. Like 21 means something different for someone who knows and uses Fahrenheit and to someone who uses and knows Celsius, for instance, right? So we have a feature that allows you to customize these units to be dynamic according to the user. So a user of yours that lives in the US can see the entire application in Fahrenheit. You can do that in Toggle, and it's not hard at all. You just use formulas, and the formulas are well known at this point. So it's an exact science, right? So you just get the formula and put it on the widget and adapt it, make it so that the formula changes according to the user preference, and the user by themselves can just pick the unit they want and the unit that you like. It's not only about temperature units, and you can put any units you want and even do something more creative then, because the feature is really powerful. It's called custom preferences if you need to refer to the documentation later on. Also, just as a side note, as I move to the slides now, please, if in these brief intermissions, if David needs to tell me that we have a question that's pertinent to what we are talking about, we're going to be giving like brief pauses in these sections, right? So I'm going to be moving, and we're going to be, even though this experience is not ideal, the dashboard is really like a blank canvas at this point. It hasn't been well thought. It's just a bunch of data from sensors put in one place. So how do we make this better? First, let's add more context so our users do not feel overwhelmed by having to think too much to just understand something that they need to. Maybe your application is more mission critical than some, right? Maybe your user just needs to be able to access a dashboard and see a number and know what they need to do. But let's say that I send this application to someone from anywhere in the globe. Maybe 21 means, okay, so there's like a nuclear reactor melting down because the number is different, right? And there's no units attached to it. So they will have to ask, and they do not have time to think, right? If it's mission critical, you need other systems in place as well. So the user experience is not only about the dashboard, you need to send notifications and things like that. Okay, so we're going to be adding more context, and after I talked a lot about this because I'm highlighting the problems that we'll be addressing, and the rest of the presentation will be smoother. It will be like really smooth sailing because we're going to be addressing the steps that we can take to improve. And you can add this to basically anything that you do on Tago. It's not only dashboards, but again, I'll be covering dashboards today. So, like I mentioned, a brief pause. David, do we have questions or anything?
There was one question I'm replying to now about LoRa and gateways, but I'm going to go ahead and reply to that one. So we're good right now. But just a reminder for the audience, you guys have questions, put them in chat or in the Q&A section, and we will get to them.
Yeah, we'll get to them in these sections that this presentation is split into. So this is the first pause. So let's keep talking. So to add more context, I talked about units, right? But it's not only that, because we had some values previously that, again, this looks fairly simple. I'm going to go back to just to highlight. I want you to pay attention to the slide, the widgets on the top right, but pay attention to the table on the top, on the bottom left side of the screen as well. Pay attention, especially to the part that says system, because the change that is going to be made in the screen is fairly simple, but I'm going to show you how it can get complicated. So I'm going to, just because I mentioned it and I don't want it to get lost, if you think about that part, in this case, the change was, it went from lowercase to title case, right? It's not a big change. You think it's like that, but it's not, because this functionality we use all the time in our own applications, because a lot of the times this is an ID. So it wouldn't be system. It would be a random ID, a random string of characters and numbers, and you can just improve your user experience by just adjusting those things, adding labels to things, adding labels to your options, mapping numeric values or numeric identifiers like IDs and barcodes to a different value. So the table had a couple of things that I changed. So, but then at this point, the table on the bottom left is the one that changed the least. But think about your users and think about that table again for just a second. Do your users understand what true or false means? Because I guess now that I changed the header of the column and it says seen, it means if that alert was seen or not, right? Just by adding a couple of labels on the table, on the columns, the experience is already improved. You think it's a small change, but you need to think about that for everything you do when you're designing a dashboard, right? Because your user is going to be seeing something, and you need to think that you will get used to your own creation. So while you're developing the dashboard, if you don't put like human readable labels on things, maybe your users will not have the same experience that you have because you just got used to it. You will get used to the things, you will get used to your application's quirks. So if you leave a bug, maybe your users will get used to it. If you leave something like undocumented, unwritten, or not explicit, your users at some point they will understand it, but that doesn't mean they won't get frustrated. And we are talking about amazing your customers, right? So let's think about just these small steps, right? I've added some labels on things that people can read better, right? It's easier to read the titles that are not more generic. And I know that up there we have indoor temperature, indoor humidity. We still have the duplication. We're going to be addressing that as well. But we have units attached to them. Since this is not a hands-on presentation, David will talk about the 2-day training coming up later. I guess next month. But in that training, we're going to be covering user preferences, and that's a really cool feature, I believe. So, but pay attention to that. It's just a small touch, but it makes a ton of difference. And also on the chart below, I'm going to be going back just one more time. Pay attention to the charts legend. It was saying the same thing all over and over because I used the same variable and a formula to extract the data. We covered that in application development webinars, and our learning center teaches you that as well. If you want to use formulas so your data records can have more information, we also have the entities feature, which I will be addressing in the end of this presentation as a small note. But again, let's think about what we have now. The legend on the charts is clear, right? We have like a severity 1, severity 2. All right. But what does that mean for your user? Again, I cannot prescribe you a general solution. You need to understand your use case. You need to understand your customers. You need to talk to them. You need to understand if the things that you make sense. Maybe in your area, your line of work, maybe in your sector, in your vertical, maybe severity 1 means maybe 1 is bigger than 3, right? Maybe severity 1 is a bigger alert than a severity 3. In my case, it was not, right? But which is my severity 1 is the really bad alert. But it may be different for your application, and you need to communicate that, right? But again, we still have a lot of text. We still have the colors aren't really helping us at this point, especially because I'm trying to show you these ideas and I haven't actually improved anything visually. So let's do that first before we get ahead of ourselves. So again, let's think about what we're talking about here. It's these small things. And you can improve on that as you go along, right? As long as you're sending the data to your sensors and you're gathering the information, you can improve the dashboards. We have a dashboard versioning feature. If you're not aware of that, you can also look at our documentation or ask us at the end of this webinar. But even if you make changes and your customers are unhappy, you can roll back the changes. Maybe you broke something. We provide a lot of these functionalities for you to have an easier time developing an amazing user experience, because that's what we are focusing on here, right? Okay, so let's move on to our next section. And again, I'm going to be taking a brief pause here. So David?
So Hugo is asking if he can relate colors to the severity of levels, like red for 1, yellow for 2. And that is absolutely doable. It's very common, actually, to change whether it's a pin or something like that. It just matters what you want to change, but you can absolutely change color levels based on the severity of whatever your issue is. And then for Ken, I see that you're asking, I believe you were asking about user levels. I think you and I are going to have a call. I see that you agreed with my message. But for Ken Wood, you can have different hierarchies for sure, right? You can have a super admin that can add sensors from the Toggle Run application, not within your admin. Remember at the top when I described the 2 different things. But yes, you can have, it just depends on the levels that you want. But that is also very, very common within Toggo, to have a hierarchy for your users, and what some can have more power than others, just like in anything else. And Fabio, our CEO, also asked a great question here. If there's any features that you guys would like to see or want to know if we have. then please post them, right? We'd love to know about those. We're always interacting with our customers and trying to improve the platform. Togo's been around for 10 years, so we're always improving, and our customers are number one. Customer obsession is real within Togo. Let me take one more check here. I think, okay, I think that's all the questions. You can proceed, Klaus. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks everyone for posting questions. Like David mentioned, if you have suggestions or even if you have just a question, so can I do this? Just ask us. Today we're talking mostly about dashboards, so I'm not going to be answering the LoRa questions, the gateway questions. David will address those in chat. But if you have questions about features and how to, maybe you have a dashboard and you want to know if you can do something, just ask us. And if you think about it tomorrow, maybe ask in our community or other communication channels, all right? So again, let's just go back to it because I forgot to mention that the title before we move on to the next slide, right? So let's address the visual improvements, right? So we had added units, we had improved the text, so it wasn't just random words that our customers may not understand. Remember, think about this, because as a developer myself, I really get lost in this at some points, and we need to constantly improve on that, right? Because we really get used to what we make. Our brains are really powerful. So if I create a dashboard that is really bad experience, especially if I'm creating it, I will get used to it so quickly that my users will not have the same experience as I have. And I may not even understand them. So they complain and it seemed perfectly fine to me, but it wasn't, because I wasn't listening. I wasn't paying attention to what I was delivering. So think about that, because even if you deliver the first version, like the first dashboard that I was showing on this webinar, you can improve upon it really quick on Tago. See, now I have colored all the widgets. Since this is not a hands-on presentation, I will not showcase it. But if you come to other webinars or even look at our documentation, you know that you can quickly change colors from a widget and copy it to others, and you can see that I have like different colors and in the icon widgets in the middle section, which is I'm referring to right now. These are static icons in my case, but you could do icon conditions so the icon changes and the color changes. And I've demonstrated that on the table below, because remember, these are static images, but I built this using Tago. I used our own platform to build everything that's used within this webinar. So when you think about the chart, I'm not saying that the icon is something. It's just like something that changes according to the value that I send to my variables, or in future entities, which I'm going to be mentioning in the end of the presentation again. So think about how cool this looks, because I've just added a couple of symbols, but this makes sense in my scenario, right? Because I want to see my severity 1 alerts as a red color. I want to see my severity 2 as a yellow color, and the severity 3, the information alerts, as a blue color. But it may be different for you. Maybe you don't want to overwhelm your users with the color red. Maybe the red would be like restricted to something that it's really, really bad. Maybe you never show red, you show kind of orange. Maybe like the scene color. Look at that table again. So I've converted the scene from true or false, which was a Boolean, to an icon, right? That looks cool. It's very simple to do. But it's red when it's not seen. Is that the ideal case? It was for me, but maybe you don't want your user seeing anything red. Never. So maybe gray would be better, right? The alert is not seen. When it was seen, you can paint it green, but when it wasn't, you can paint it gray instead of red, because that may make your user feel more comfortable while using your application, because they know that the data they are looking at means something, right? The colors mean something, the text means something. What we choose to put on our dashboard, it should mean something, especially to our users, depending on your use case, right? So for this, again, I've made most visual improvements here are colors, but I've also added an image. So someone asked about the hierarchies. We have a bunch of forms of hierarchy in Toggle. When you think about dashboards and applications, you can have users that are super admins, like David mentioned, that are managers, users that can only see things. You can manage these permissions on a fine grain level, but you can also make hierarchies on dashboards. So if you look at the top left part, you can see that there's organization Tago.io and building Tago.io headquarters, right? So all this time I've been showing you like these data points are fictional, but this application was designed like it is like sensors in the Tago.io headquarters building. So as you see this, you understand that you can change the building for Tago.io, and you can also change the organization. And you can do this so you don't have like a billion dashboards your customers have to sift through while using your application. You have just one dashboard for monitoring something. You can have tabs that only appear to certain users. You can improve all of these things. And if you have a question, ask us. We may just have the solution that's for you. Okay. So again, I made these improvements so we can talk about the more interesting things, but I've added colors and symbols. The charts now have matching colors to the middle section. So if the line refers to a severity 1 alert, it's also red. So that makes more sense, right? It's important to think about these things. Let's make the application like cohesive. And we're going to come back to that term, cohesion. So let's take another quick break so we can see if David has any more questions for us to answer.
I'll respond to Gene in real time. I would suggest scheduling a demo, Gene, but you had a good question. So I put in there about building your own custom widget. Even if we don't have a widget out of the box per se, you can build your own in a very short amount of time, an hour, a few hours. And we have tutorials on that and documentation on that. But that's another great thing about Tago. Again, as I said at the top of the webinar, we are so focused on customization and be able to meet all your business requirements in all the different verticals. That's what Tago is about. It's not just for one vertical, obviously, right? But really it's about customization. So custom widgets, people build custom widgets all the time, and I've seen some really good ones. So Gene, yes, you could absolutely do what you're talking about. And one other thing, widget position. Are you able to copy a widget position as well and apply it to an existing widget? I believe this is possible, Claus, right?
I'm not sure I understand. I mean, if you want to copy it in a different tab, no. But you can just align it, or you can use the API directly. I can answer these questions in the end of the presentation, or if you can post them in the community, I would answer to those as well.
Nice.
But I can take a longer time to answer that question later on.
Okay, and it looks like Gene has built his own custom widgets already. So good job, Gene. Awesome, way to go. All right, Claus.
Yeah, that's really cool, Gene. So I'm going to be talking now about effective user space, but just to emphasize what David just said, custom widgets are really powerful, and you can integrate them with, just think of it as a widget that you built on your own. So you can have like a 3D modeling thing, you can have like a form that behaves differently, you can have just a chart that we don't have. Maybe you want a funnel chart, and you say, hey, Tago.io doesn't have a funnel chart yet. I want to build one. You can. Right, so we also have Learning Center and webinars on that topic as well. I know we'll be giving you this year about custom widgets. So if you want to join, you can, and we'll teach you some stuff about custom widgets, which are really, really cool. But let's move on to the next topic. We are getting to the end of the presentation. So let's make some effective user space, right? I'm going to go back to this just so we see one more time because we are pausing for these questions. So take a look at this this dashboard. It has a lot of things. Do we want our users to see everything all at once, or do we want to have maybe some of these widgets are better suited for a different tab, maybe a different dashboard altogether? And again, think about user permissions. Users can see different tabs. even on a dashboard level, you can make users be able to see a tab or not. That's really powerful. And you can customize these widgets accordingly, right? So maybe like a regular user doesn't have access to the charts, right? But in our case, let's just think about these things one at a time. So I have a lot of widgets. Maybe I don't want all of them, right? So let's make some effective use of space. And that's not only removing, right? Maybe less is more, sometimes more is more, right? But in this case, I want to emphasize the indoor measurements, right? Because maybe my user knows where the headquarters of Tago.io is located, right? So they can just have an app that on their phone that shows the temperature there. But maybe there's a sensor. Maybe they can click a button on this dashboard. Maybe you can see more, right? So I have removed the outdoor measurement widgets. I have also removed the counts of severity tree alerts because that was just noise, right? You don't want to see how much alerts in the lowest level you have. Those are more for the developers, right? So maybe I have a different tab where someone can see the amount of info alerts. Maybe I can even filter on this table. You can do that as well. I didn't do it in this case because it would involve a script and analysis, but it's possible to do it as well. But I've also made the table wider, and that makes a ton of difference because I wasn't sure anyone could read at any point. So I was just, yeah, that's one thing that we want to notice these things because these are all small improvements. And we have received reports and suggestions and tickets and questions and everything. And when we see dashboards, sometimes when people ask us for feedback, we can give these things, these tips because we are used to seeing the information like, again, like I mentioned, I was used to that small table, but maybe my users won't be used to it. Maybe they don't want to keep resizing to be able to read. They just want to look at it and be able to read. So the information now on this dashboard for my use case is more presentable. And you need to think about your use case, how your users need to interact with your dashboard, what information is critical to them, what information is important to them, and how else can you show it? You don't have to put it all in one dashboard, especially because it makes loading slower. It's like a fact of how the computers work, right? If you have to bring more data in, we can do a lot of things like make the data loading in parallel, but it doesn't matter because it will still load more data. So do you want all the data loaded at once, or do you want to maybe streamline even the usage of the dashboard? You don't have to have everything shown at once, because if you look at the chart that was removed, but I have added a small button on the top right corner of the table that says history. And you can customize the title, the icon. Again, another mention that I will bring back briefly at the end of the presentation, but this application was designed with a dictionary. So you're not seeing it here in act, but you're seeing it in action. So my application, on a flip of a button, if I just configure the translation, can change the languages. And this is a really powerful feature that not only changes the text in the interface that it's built into Tago.io, even the data that you send that is shown in this table, in dynamic tables, can have dictionary strings attached, and you can translate those as well. It's a really powerful feature for localization of your application, especially if you're developing for different markets. So we have made more effective use of space. I'm sorry I'm not showing in the slide how it looks for the chart that was removed, but I will show you in this next section, just after a brief pause for questions. So David?
Let me see here. Can your system send its alerts to a client third-party ticketing system? And can we see any returned information?
Yeah, that's possible with analysis, but I think it's out of scope of this presentation, but it is absolutely possible. You just have to integrate with your third-party provider by making, as long as they accept some sort of communication, right? If they have an HTTPS API, you can do it, absolutely. I'm just answering this really quick, but feel free to post these questions on our community or even the chat. We can answer those. Is there anything else? There's the end of the presentation. So I'm just going to be moving through before we just run out of time. But to deliver a stellar user experience, we need to think about other things as well, right? Just like I was mentioning a lot of things that you can do, but think about the things that your user should be able to do in some scenarios, right? So to deliver a stellar user experience, maybe think about the small things, right? Maybe these two widgets at the top and the two in the middle section that I removed one, right? But maybe I want to just make them closer so there's no space between them because again, our brain processes all this information. We don't notice it, but when we group things together, we are communicating to brains of different users that those are grouped, and I could even remove the titles. And again, I've merged these widgets together, but I've also adjusted the border cornering so it's less rounded to meet. And you can also customize transparency, add background blur that was showcased before. Also, if you see the widgets on the top, you just it makes more sense when you put them together, but you can also just remove the gap between them, because to make these widgets grouped, I remove the distance between them. But you can also increase it. Maybe one widget needs more space around it because you want it to be emphasized. One thing that us, the developers that work in design as well, do sometimes is just like to close our eyes for 5 seconds and then like just open it and just see where our eyes go to, right? Because if I close my eyes and I open it, my eyes is drawn to the logo because to me it's important information, right? In my application case, because if you're changing the organization, the image may reflect like a camera feed, or it can be like a photo of the headquarters, so you know, and you don't have to read small text. You just at a glance you know what dashboard it is. If you're looking at from a factory floor, you can identify that I've changed the font sizes to be way bigger, and the image you can see from afar. But if I need to head closer and see the log, I can. So I'm thinking about these things when I'm making these changes. That's what I'm telling you to do step by step, right? It is like 50 minutes of presentation already, and we're getting close to the end. But think about all of these steps. We make small adjustments, each at one step, and each step made the experience better, right? You may not like the colors, you may have used a different unit or whatever, but you get that this is improving slowly, right? So I've showcased you a feature that was released last year, so you can configure the distance between widgets and make them closer together as well. But we also have another feature that I was mentioning before. This is an older feature, but it's absolutely important because this chart now, when you click that history button, the chart opens on top of everything. And this works on the mobile app as well. So if you want to hide a chart behind a button, so you can see even more data, excuse me, or even a form that you click a button and you click, okay, so click button, new user, and it opens a form. You can do that. And this widget is not accessible for my end users at all unless I wanted to. Just it's really simple to do with a hidden tab on a dashboard. Again, please ask questions about this if you need to, but our documentation covers all of these features. I'm just showcasing a couple of new things as well. So this is another cool feature that we have where your users can already export data from tables by clicking on the three vertical dots on the top right corner of the widget. But did you know that your users can also customize which columns they see, and you can customize as well? So maybe you don't want to see all columns of the table all the time. Maybe you want to put more information in, and your users want to remove some. And this works even with exports. So if you don't want to export data directly from the dashboard, and you want to just remove a column, you can just toggle the visibility of the column, and that reflects in the export as well. These things we work on to allow you to deliver the greatest possible experience to your customers. But keep in mind that despite that this is already a 50-minute presentation and I haven't covered everything that we offer, think about this as steps, right? I didn't even think about colors before the third step. So you can do a lot before that. So this is just showcasing that I have hidden some columns, right? And just so I can finish the presentation here, David mentioned toggle run, which is where your users access your application from. So we made this really cool looking dashboard now. It's cleaned up. It has some colors, but we haven't customized our run portal, right? It's in the default colors. If you have already deployed the toggle run application, you know that these are our default colors. Well, the logo isn't, but that was, well, small mistake. My bad. But the logo would be the Tagoyo logo, but I've customized it. And it's really simple for you to make your application cohesive by applying a theme so that the dashboard now reflects your branding colors. Maybe the colors that I've selected are reflected in the run interface as well, which is the portal, right? So now everything is well tied together, and your users also won't see a huge list of dashboards on the left side because I've customized my run to have only sidebar buttons, and these buttons open dashboards. And again, like I mentioned, think about hierarchy. Like someone asked the question about it. Sorry, I forgot your name, but think about these things. So you can have buttons that are only displayed to certain users. So an admin will see certain buttons and have access to a dashboard, but another users won't. So you won't have a lot of clutter in your screen. And that's also because maybe users don't have access. And why should they see something they don't have access to? So I'm sorry I sped up through things at the end because I was thinking about the time. But I'm going to hand it back to you, David. I was really excited to be talking about this today. So thanks everyone for joining. So please ask questions if you have them. I will be taking a look at the chat now. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Klaus. So one quick thing, I do want to share my screen here real quick, just for a few minutes. I won't take much more of your time, but I think this is valuable. I'm just on the main Togo website, right? There's no way we can cover everything in an hour webinar. I mean, Togo is just so powerful, it'd be impossible. That's why we have these webinars focused. But even for, amazing your customers with the dashboard, there's a lot more you could do, as Klaus referred to. One quick thing here. If you go to resources, there's a couple things here. You could post in the community, but there's a couple specific things I want to show you. We have these dashboard templates that you can download, and once you download these, you own them, meaning you could change out the widgets, change the colors, do whatever you want to them. So you can download the widgets. I'm sorry, not the widgets. Download the dashboards, and as I said, you own them. Another really cool thing, if you really want to get to know Togo and how to build on Togo for free, you can go to our Learning Center, right? So here, these, as I said, these are free to take. We have the fundamentals and then a little more advanced. I suggest taking all these, but if you're just, maybe interested in how analysis works, then just take the analysis, right? But these are very easy to take. Again, free, great to use. And also for upcoming events, I think this is worth saying as well, right? Just go to our events and webinars because we have some cool stuff coming up. We already talked about very briefly the 2-day immersive training. I would go here and look at our agenda, right? You don't have to attend for 2 days. You can just attend the section that you're interested in. But this is going to be much more interactive, right? Where we're interacting with you. We'll have Klaus there. I'm going to have Victor Lima, lead developer, Freddie Muniz, which is a great developer, and I'll be hosting. So you get to see me again. Yay. So make sure you guys sign up for the immersive training. It's really cool. And it's very popular, by the way, and fills up quick. So I would do that as soon as you can. And see, we have deploying portals and mobile apps. So just check out our events, right? Come up and you can really get more engaged in Togo. Of course, there's self-help videos. all that sort of stuff. And lastly, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever you use, or X, whatever it's called now, and schedule your demo, sign up for a free account, and really get engaged with Togo and get engaged with your CSM, right? Again, that's my role for anybody that joined late. So it's my job to make sure you have everything you need to be successful, as well as the other CSMs, Alex, Tiago. I'm sure some of you on here know those guys. So anyway, I don't want to take too much more of your time. Great webinar. Again, thank you to Claus and everybody behind the scenes that made this happen. And thank you for all the interaction and the questions. It's really good to see that. And again, if you need more detail, schedule your demo. But other than that, have a great afternoon, evening, wherever you're at in the world. And we'll be here when you guys are ready to talk. Bye-bye, everybody.